Good evening. My name is Lynn Donovan, and I am the theologian in residence at St. Andrews in Picton. I join you this evening from the sanctuary and at the Advent wreath where we have just lit the candle of hope. I think my favorite story at this time of year about hope comes from Luke's Gospel in the first chapter. And as Dominique Crossan tells us, the stories that introduce both Matthew and Luke are really stories that are meant to be a bit of a prologue. They have been added by the author, who is an incredible poet and theologian, to almost introduce the themes of the gospel to us. So we begin by meeting Zechariah. Zechariah is a priest. He's married to Elizabeth. Elizabeth is from the line of Aaron, so both of them come from priestly families. And yet what we learn is that they are without child. They are barren. And it comes the time when Zechariah, as the priest, has got one turn to go and light the incense in the Holy of Holies. And it's very interesting because let's stop for a moment and think about what the archetype of the priest is about. The priest is the one whose task it is to point to the mystery or to fling open a window or a door so that others can encounter the mystery. And yet, Zechariah himself is not so open to mystery. We are told that he and his wife are barren. They do not have a child, and it is a source of deep sadness and hopelessness for them. At the same time, we are told that they're completely upright citizens and totally obedient to all of God's laws. It's kind of like the person who wrote this story wants to make a point. Listen, one's relationship with mystery on the earth is not dependent on following all the rules. It's not so much about being a good person as being someone who is open to be surprised. And so Zechariah goes into the Holy of Holies, a place where God is supposed to live, in the Temple of Jerusalem. That is the biggest symbol of faith and the presence of God. And what does he encounter but an angel who tells him that God has heard the prayers of he and his wife, and they will have a child. Where have we heard that story before? Anyway, Zechariah, the person who is supposed to be flinging open the doors and the windows so that people can have a sense of how God is present in everyday life and in the unimaginable, refuses to believe the angel. It's kind of interesting, don't you think, that while Elizabeth is the barren one, in fact, Zechariah is equally barren. He is barren of hope. He is barren of imagination. And so he tells the angel, I don't believe you. And the angel, and most angels are very cheeky, said, okay then, well, you are not going to be able to speak until this child is born. So for me, I think that entire story, and in fact, most of the stories that are in the prologue of both Matthew and Luke's gospel, can be boiled down to one line. And I'll borrow this line from Mary Oliver. Allow some room in your heart for the unimaginable. And for those of you who are Mary Oliver fans, you may know that her childhood was particularly traumatic. And having heard an interview with her much later in her life, it was very clear that in order to fight the demons both within and maybe those demons without, she woke every morning, dressed, went outside to pay attention to the gifts that were right in front of her, whether it was the bird song in the trees, or the frog down by the creek, or the sun as it rose over the horizon. And her poetry, most of it, is an invitation to pay attention, to connect with the gifts and the mystery underneath it all, every day, and to be rooted in those gifts, sustained by those gifts, and to combat a propensity to despair with those gifts. This is the first candle that we light during the Advent season. The candle of hope is an invitation for us as well to pay attention, to go deeper, to sit in silence, or to open our eyes to see the magnificence of every day, to connect with the riches of our own soul, and to be fueled so as to be bearers of light and hope when we go out into the world. This is our deepest calling, to be filled with hope, to be open to imagination, and to be able to recognize the gifts that are not just for our good, but are meant to serve the common good. So I invite you, friends, to don your angel's wings, to become cheeky and lovely and imaginable angels as we continue to walk through this Advent season.